All right. Hello, everybody. My name's John from the West Virginia Robotics Alliance, and this is our video with information about live streaming your VEX Robotics tournament. So a little bit about who we are. We support robotics events across West Virginia and across many different robotics programs. Um, on average, in a typical year, we'll run somewhere around 30 to 40 events um, in different venues all across the state, high schools and universities and other venues. Um, we've been live streaming events for a number of years now. We started off live streaming just kind of the large events, just our state championships, and that's been since about 2018. Um, in the 2021 season, obviously we couldn't run events in person, and so we ran a large number of remote skills only events where teams would call in over Zoom and do skills runs, and we live streamed all of those so that people could watch and follow along. And then when we went back to running in person events in 2022, at that point we began live streaming every event we run. So for the last, I guess, 4 seasons now, we've been live streaming every event. At this point, we've run well over 100 live streams, and you can see videos of our previous live streams on our YouTube channel, which is also where you're watching this video. There's more information about what we do in general at our website there. All right, so what are we going to talk about in this video? I'm going to kind of go over the basic aspects of setting up a live stream for your VEX or aerial drone competition tournament. So whether it's VEX IQ or V5 or aerial drones, obviously the technical aspects of running those tournaments are all pretty much the same, and so it is for live streaming. We're going to talk about different kinds of cameras you might buy or use, getting the video mixing working, and adding those video overlays. We're going to talk about audio. Along the way, I'm going to have some equipment recommendations for specific pieces of gear that we use that I would recommend. And then at the end, we're going to get out of slides world and into the real world, where I'm going to set up the tech for kind of a basic event live stream and talk about configuring everything, and we'll walk through that. A couple of things we're not going to cover in this video. This is not going to be a general video about how to run a VEX event or how to use the tournament manager software. There are other good resources about how to do that available. I will add, if you are new to running VEX events, I would probably not recommend that you worry about live streaming at that point. I think there are lots of important considerations that you have when you're organizing an event, and live streaming probably isn't at the top of the priority list. It's more important that you get good at providing a great experience for the people that are in the venue, and then down the road at your second or third event, if you want to worry about adding a live stream, then that would be a better time. This is also not going to be a video about how to use OBS in general. OBS is the video mixing software that we're going to use. It's very widely supported. There's lots of great information about how to set up and configure and use OBS. And so this isn't going to be a general resource on that. This also isn't a complete guide to everything that we do when we live stream an event. Our live stream setup has become relatively complicated over the years in ways that, obviously I think make our streams better, but you don't necessarily need to worry about at your first time live streaming an event. So that may be a future video. If people are interested, there may be a future video walking through our live stream setup. But here we're going to focus on just kind of what you need to get started. Conversely, this also isn't going to be a comprehensive list of like every single little thing that you need to do to live stream an event, because then it would be long and boring, and the specific things you need to worry about are going to vary depending on what equipment you have and your venue and all sorts of different things. So this is kind of more of an overview, and it's important to set up and test all your equipment before your event so that you know it all works well together. All right, we're going to start by talking about video. And I have kind of a diagram here of how it's all going to work logically. So obviously we've got some fields. In this example diagram, we've got 2 fields, and each field has a camera pointing at it. And then we've also got Tournament Manager, which generates the graphics that are going to go into the live stream, showing the teams in the match and the time and the match number and the score and all those graphics the TM generates. So those are our kind of inputs to the video system, and they all go into the video switcher in the middle. And we can see here in the middle kind of an example of the video that the switcher is going to generate. So it's taking those TM graphics and it's overlaying the graphics on top of the camera feed. And then on the left, we have our outputs. So we're going to send that video, obviously, to our live stream, whether it's on YouTube or Twitch or whatever platform we're using. And then we're also going to send that video to a TV or a projector in the venue so that the people there can see it. So the video switcher in the middle, just to kind of expand on that a little bit. So its primary jobs are to superimpose the Tournament Manager graphics over the field video. And then also we want to show the video feed for the correct field at any given time. So we've got 2 cameras, 1 on each field. And if we're playing a match on field 1, then we want camera 1 to be on the stream. And if we're playing a match on field 2, we want camera 2 to be on the stream. So those are kind of the essential functions of the video mixer. We can also do, more advanced things. You could have multiple camera feeds that are combined together in various ways. You could have some sort of fancy transition to animate between different cameras or scenes, and kind of the sky's the limit as far as other fancy things you can do to zhuzh up your live stream a little bit. So this video mixer. There are, hardware devices that you could purchase to do this job, where you plug all your cameras into them and press buttons to configure it, and it does that job. That is not going to be the focus of our setup in this video. Instead, in this video, we're going to talk about using OBS to do that job. OBS is a piece of software. It runs on your computer. And I think there are a number of advantages to using OBS for this task rather than a dedicated hardware mixer. First is, OBS is free and open source software. So you can download it. It's widely used and supported. Lots of people use OBS. It's kind of the standard piece of software to use for kind of semi-professional or amateur live streaming. So lots of people use it. That means there's lots of information online about how to use it, tutorials with different, things that people will show you how to do. So it's really pretty easy to get started using OBS, and kind of self-teach yourself how it works. Obviously, not needing to buy dedicated hardware, there's a cost saving there. I also, probably most people don't need to buy a computer to run this software. Certainly for the sorts of tasks that we're going to use OBS for in this video, you don't need super powerful hardware. You probably already have a suitable computer or can borrow one from someone to use at an event. I also think that if you want to do some of that more complicated stuff, mixing multiple video sources together and custom transitions and such, I've found that that's a lot easier for me to do in OBS than on some of the hardware video mixers that I've used. So I think there's an advantage there. But really the killer reason to use OBS specifically for live streaming VEX tournaments is plugins. So there's a whole ecosystem of plugins that you can install that extend or add functionality to OBS in various ways. And in particular, there's a Tournament Manager plugin. And what the Tournament Manager plugin does is it brings these TM graphics into OBS as a source, kind of natively in the software, rather than having some external piece of hardware, some other computer that's generating these graphics, and then you have to capture that video and bring them into OBS and get rid of this green background so that you can superimpose it over the video. There's lots of ways that can kind of go wrong or look less than great. You got to worry about the resolution and scaling it up and down. Getting that green color out, we would call that keying out the green, is more complicated than you might think. There's lots of fiddly settings that you have to tune just right. And then if one thing that happens sometimes is if there's any similar shades of green in any of the sponsor logos, then those also become transparent, and then you got transparency in the video when you don't want it. In comparison, if you use the Tournament Manager plugin, the parts of the video that are supposed to be transparent are just transparent, and everything works with very little configuration. So that's a huge advantage, in my opinion, of using OBS for this application instead of a hardware mixer. Of course, you run software, you need a computer to run that software on. OBS runs on all the major operating systems, Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. The Tournament Manager plugin, however, is not available for Mac OS. It recently became available for Linux, which is interesting. But in practice, you're probably going to be running this on a Windows computer. You are going to need to have some sort of external display support on that computer because you want to send the video from OBS out to a TV or a projector in the venue. And you don't need a super powerful computer, but you do need something that's reasonably powerful. If you've got a decent computer from the last maybe 5 years or so, that'll probably work. The important thing is good cooling, because this is a sustained task. The computer's going to be encoding this video for basically the entire length of the tournament, which could be 6-8 hours. And so if you have a laptop that's really prone to overheating, that's probably not a great choice. A couple of things that are nice to have. It's nice to have an Ethernet port built into the computer. You can use an external dongle, certainly, but if you have a built-in port, that's one less thing to go wrong. In a moment, we're going to talk about different types of cameras, and there are some applications where your video is coming into the computer over USB, and if you go with one of those solutions, then it's nice to have a large number of USB ports on the computer. So, to reiterate, you probably already have a computer that you can use for this task. If you've got a reasonably modern laptop, like a decent laptop from the last 5 years, and it's got good cooling, you can probably use that to run this live stream. Another option, I've seen several people bring in their home gaming computers, like a big tower gaming computer. That will certainly be more than adequate for this task. If you've got a gaming laptop, that'll probably be fine too. What's probably not a good choice if you've got a really old or slow laptop, you probably shouldn't go that route. And if you've got a computer that tends to get hot under sustained loads, or even one of these fancy new laptops that don't have a fan at all, that's probably not a great choice for this application, because you want to make sure things stay cool the whole time. One other concern, as far as choosing a computer and setting things up, if you look at the official documentation for the Tournament Manager OBS plugin, one of the things it'll tell you is that you should not run the live stream from the same computer as the Tournament Manager server. You do need to have TM on the stream computer, but the official guidance is that the server should be a separate computer from the computer that's running the live stream. That said, the software totally will let you run the stream from the same computer as the TM server, and that is actually what we do in our stream setup, and it's never caused us any problems. But that is the official guidance. So if you're gonna run everything off one computer, do that at your own risk. I'm going to go on a brief tangent here on networking for running events. I said this wasn't going to be a general guide to how to run an event, but there are a couple topic areas that I'm gonna go on tangents because they're relevant to running live streams. If you are running VEX tournaments and you're not running your own network for all your devices, you really should. That I think that's the number one thing you can do to increase kind of the reliability of your event technology. It's pretty easy to do. Any old Wi-Fi router that you have kind of laying around will probably be fine. And if you're anything like me, you're gonna have old Wi-Fi routers laying around. And it's pretty easy to set up. You connect the internet port or the WAN port on your router to port somewhere in the venue that gives you internet. The kind of important computers, such as the TM server and the stream PC, get hardwired connections to that router with an Ethernet cable. Non-essential devices such as the tablets people are scoring on, or if you have a display in the pits, those can connect via Wi-Fi. Field pies, the pies or computers that are running field control and queuing displays on each field, those can work over Wi-Fi, but it's nice to give them a hardwired connection too. This way you don't have to worry about Wi-Fi signal or is the network blocking things that TM needs and all sorts of other concerns. Venue IT policies don't always necessarily make this super easy, and every venue is a little different. But we run events in a lot of different venues, and I have actually had really good luck, with being allowed to do this as long as we are communicative with the venue and their IT people in advance. In general, it's been my experience that if you reach out to them and explain exactly what you need to do and why you need to do it, they are generally pretty accommodating about that sort of thing. So that would be my recommendation. And the reason I bring this up is because it's really important for the stream computer in particular to have a hardwired connection to the network. I certainly would not recommend running a live stream over Wi-Fi. All right, we're going to talk about cameras now. So some general information about cameras. Obviously, you're going to point a camera at each of your field. The video from that camera is going to get into your computer so that OBS can use it somehow. Exactly how depends on what kind of camera you have, and we'll get into different ways we can do that. Some features we're looking for in a camera. I think probably the most important feature is the field of view. So the field of view is kind of how wide the camera can see. If you have a wider field of view, it's typically measured in degrees. So if you have a wider field of view, a larger number of degrees, that means you can place the camera closer to the field and still get the whole field in shot. That said, a very wide field of view can also kind of make things look a little warped. You kind of get that fisheye effect. So there's a balance to be had there. As far as resolution, you probably want 1080p. Lots of cameras are 4K now. It's fine. It's not a reason to reject a camera. But the live stream itself, the kind of final output resolution of the live stream is very likely going to be 1080p. There aren't really, very, very few people are live streaming in 4K because there's a significant increase in bandwidth there. So 4K cameras are fine, but not necessary by any means. And beyond just the video resolution, you want a camera that's going to look good overall. So in addition to the specific cameras that I'm going to recommend in a bit, do some research and get a camera that's well reviewed and so forth if you're looking to buy equipment. So kind of the maybe the most obvious approach for cameras that are going to connect to your computer are USB webcams. USB webcams are everywhere. They're pretty cheap. There's lots of different models available, and you may already have access to a few that you can borrow to use for this application. And certainly, they can work very well for this purpose. I know there are lots of tournaments that use USB cameras for their live streams. The big downside to using USB cameras is that you've got to run that USB signal over a relatively long distance. From the place where the camera is to where the computer is that's running the stream is going to be a ways. It could be 30, 40, 50 feet. And running USB over long distances is not a foolproof task. It can be tricky. And we're going to talk about that on the next slide. Another problem that we have encountered in the past is kind of USB bandwidth. So we found that if we plugged like multiple USB webcams into a single hub, then there wasn't necessarily the bandwidth to use them all at the same time, and they would kind of drop out randomly. So if you're going to go with USB cameras, I think the ideal thing would be to plug each camera into its own unique port on the computer directly rather than running through hubs with other devices and so on. All right, running USB over long distances. There are a couple ways you can do that, and these USB extension cables are one of them. So they're pretty simple to use. They've got a USB plug on one end and a port on the other, and you plug the plug into your computer, and then you plug the camera into the port on the other end of the cable, and then you've got a very long USB cable. They're relatively inexpensive. There's lots of different models. You can buy them on Amazon and get them pretty easily. You don't need any special equipment to use them. The downsides, I've found these can be a little flaky. USB is just really not meant for this sort of thing. So there's all sorts of different hacks and techniques that these cables use to get USB to run over the long distances. And sometimes the downside is reliability. Another thing to watch out for is very often these cables have some sort of active component in the middle of the cable, like a repeater or a signal booster or something like that, which means there'll be a big plastic lump in the middle of the cable. And if you're running this cable along the floor, from your computer to your field, then you don't want that big plastic lump to end up in the middle of a walkway where someone's going to trip over it or stand on it and break it or whatever. So that's a thing to watch out for, these kind of plastic lumps in the middle of the cable. A couple of general notes if you're looking to buy one of these. Some of these extension cables have external power, particularly the ones that are USB 3.0. If you're carrying USB 3 signals over these long distances, then those cables generally will require separate power inputs. In my experience, that's not necessary for this application. So the plain USB 2.0 cables, which generally don't require external power, in my experience, are going to be fine for a 1080p webcam. Obviously, if you go this route, again, test everything, make sure your cable works with your webcam before your event. But that's been my experience. And we have had good luck with Monoprice brand USB extension cables in particular, which is the one in the image there. Another option for running USB over long distances are these kits to run it over Cat5 cable. So Cat5 cable is what you would use for Ethernet. Cat5 or Ethernet cable is super cheap and totally designed for this sort of long run. So you're going to have less worries about kind of the reliability of a long cable run. It's also pretty slim and easy to run. So you're not going to have to worry about lumps in the middle of a cable or big, thick cables that people are going to trip over or things like that. So that can be a very attractive option. Downsides, obviously, you've got to buy this kit. It's another piece of equipment, so that may add some extra cost. And as far as I can tell, all of these kits, all they carry over the Ethernet cable is the data portion of the USB signal. They don't carry power. So that means you need an external power adapter at the camera end of the cable there, as you can see in this image. So that means you got to run power to your fields and have another plug available. So that's that option. Another option as far as cameras is network cameras. And I think these offer a lot of advantages over USB cameras for this sort of application. So as we've already talked about, Cat5 network cable is pretty cheap, and it's totally designed to run over the sorts of distances we need for this application. So, we are well within the capabilities of that technology. A lot of network cameras can also be powered over the same cable that they get their network connection over. That's called Power over Ethernet, or PoE, and it can be a really convenient option. It means you only need to run one cable to your camera, and it gets everything over that cable. You don't have to worry about powering it externally. There are also some battery-powered wireless network cameras, so you connect them to your Wi-Fi, and then they're sending video over Wi-Fi. Obviously, battery life can be a concern for lasting through a whole tournament, but that also can be a really interesting option. And the big advantage is that because the video is going over the network, and our Stream PC already has a connection to our network, we don't need to worry about USB bandwidth, plugging in additional devices to capture the video, or having capture cards like we're going to talk about in a minute for HDMI cameras. Video just comes in over the network. You don't need to do anything special in hardware to get the video in. The big downside of network cameras is that there's going to be an increase in cost compared to USB webcams, most likely. At the kind of low end of the cost range in network cameras, you have a lot of these cameras that are meant for security applications. I think these are probably not a great fit for the sort of broadcast application we're talking about. Security cameras don't often have like really great video quality. Also, latency can be a concern for these sorts of cameras. Those are just not high priorities in the security space. If you're looking for security cameras, you care more about compressing the video down so it doesn't take up a ton of room versus having super high quality. So you don't necessarily have the super high quality cameras. If your video has 2-3 seconds of latency, that's not a big problem in the world of security cameras. But for this sort of broadcast application, you want latency to be as low as possible. So I think these are probably not great fits for live streaming VEX tournaments. What is a much better option is NDI network cameras. NDI is actually like a video protocol. It's a way to send video over a network that is kind of meant specifically for broadcast applications like this one. So because it's meant for broadcast, the latency is very good. It's very low. And these NDI cameras, the cameras that can output NDI, they're going to be meant for broadcast too, so they're going to have generally higher quality video. NDI cameras can work over a wired cable or over Wi-Fi. There are some models that can do either or both of those things. And there's also a plugin for OBS that will let you add NDI sources into OBS directly. And we'll see that in our demo. It makes it very easy to get the video into OBS. I do have a couple of specific camera recommendations for NDI field cameras. The top item here in this slide, these are the field cameras that we use currently. It's the HuddleCam HD Pro IP. There's a non-IP model that has HDMI output instead. I would recommend the IP model. And it really kind of ticks all the boxes. It's got a very wide field of view. It's actually got a 4K sensor. The camera itself is 4K, but the output video is 1080p, which means we can kind of zoom artificially and crop in and pan around if we need to, which is very convenient. It sends power and data. It receives power and sends data over the single network cable, so it's PoE powered, which is very convenient for us. And in the domain of NDI cameras, it's also at the lower end in terms of cost, so it can be relatively cost effective. Obviously, at $329, it is going to be more expensive than a USB webcam, but it's also kind of been a lot more convenient for us. Another option that could be really interesting is the Logitech Mevo, which is the bottom camera here. We have one of these too. We don't use it for pointing at the fields, but it's handy for kind of putting in other places if we want to get a wide shot of the whole venue to use in our live stream. That can be that's generally what we use for that. It is a wireless camera, so it's got a battery built in. And it connects to your Wi-Fi network, and it sends NDI video over the Wi-Fi. I've actually been really surprised by how well it does that. There is just a little bit more latency than we get sending it over the, if we have a hardwired connection to the huddle cams. But it still looks pretty good. The quoted battery life is 6 hours, which is probably not enough to get a full tournament's worth of video, but it's powered over USB-C, and if we're putting our Mevo somewhere where there isn't an outlet nearby, we just plug a USB battery into it, and then it has no trouble getting through a full event. The downside is it's a little more expensive, and certainly if you get the optional accessory that adds an Ethernet port and lets it be PoE powered, then you are significantly higher in cost than the huddle cam. Power over Ethernet. So we've talked about you can power the cameras over the network cable. This has been a really convenient option for us. You do need some special hardware to basically put power in the cable. So you could have an injector, which is basically a device that adds power to a single cable, or you can buy a switch like this that adds power to multiple ports at once, basically. So a switch like this, you would plug it into power, you would run a cable from one of the ports to your Wi-Fi router, and then you would plug the cameras into the other ports, and they're relatively inexpensive. So you'll need something like this if you go for PoE cameras. All right, another option in the world of cameras is HDMI cameras. So obviously lots of cameras out in the world have HDMI output, and maybe you already have some cameras like that kicking around that you can use. In particular, I know there are some events that use like GoPros or other action cameras as their field cameras. GoPros have a pretty wide field of view. So you can put them real close to the field and still see the whole thing, which can be convenient. The downside is kind of similar to USB. Running HDMI over long distances is not trivial. It's just not really designed to do that sort of thing in my experience. You can get 30, 50, 100-foot HDMI cables. But they're not super fun to use. They tend to be very bulky. Some of them need external power at the end, at the camera end, which means you got to run another cable. And then you have to deal with capturing the video, which we'll talk about on the next slide. So there's just, there's some faff involved in sending HDMI signals over these long distances. Another kind of word of caution about HDMI, obviously there's lots of video camcorders or photo cameras that have HDMI outputs. Obviously every camera is different, but probably a lot of those cameras are not going to have a super wide FOV, which is what you really want. for this sort of application. So obviously, try, if you have a camera like this, by all means try it, and maybe it'll work well. But my sense is they're probably not going to be great as a first choice. So if we have this HDMI video, we're going to use HDMI cameras. We need to get that video into OBS. So we need some sort of capture device to get that video in. The most common thing to use for this purpose would be a USB capture card. So these basically, you plug them into a USB port and you plug the HDMI cable into them, and they basically show up to your computer as like a USB webcam or another USB video device. And from there, you can see them in any program that you would use with a USB webcam. Obviously, you'll need one of these for each camera, and kind of all the same caveats about USB bandwidth would apply as with webcams. So you would ideally want to plug each of them into a single port on your computer. There are, in the last few years, the market has been flooded with really cheap, no-name USB capture cards. I've had mixed luck with those. Sometimes they work great, sometimes they don't. So, if reliability is a huge concern, then it might be worth spending a little bit more on a name brand model, such as the one on the right, which is the Elgato Cam Link. That seems to be a very popular model for this sort of thing. You can also get internal capture cards. So these would go in a slot in your computer. If you have like a tower computer, you could put one of those in there. There are also some laptops that support like getting an enclosure to put one of these cards in. If you have a Thunderbolt port on your laptop, you could potentially do that. And these often support multiple inputs. So like this one here, which is just a random example I found on Amazon. This has 4 inputs, so you could have up to 4 cameras connected here to a single device, which could be convenient. And you also wouldn't have to worry about USB bandwidth with this application. A third option is some sort of device like this, which takes HDMI input and basically turns it into NDI. So we have a couple of these. We have a couple of this particular model, which is called the Zowie box, which is a kind of an interesting name. But it's a really handy little thing to have it does a variety of things, not just encoding video to NDI. But this could be a really interesting option for using HDMI cameras, because you could put this next to the camera and then just run an Ethernet cable to this, and that way you don't have to worry about running HDMI cables over long distances. And these can even be PoE powered, so you don't have to power them at that end either. So that could be a really interesting option, although obviously that's going to be an increase in cost, compared to something like a USB capture card. All right, and one more option we're going to talk about in the world of cameras is SDI. SDI is at this point we're in the world of professional broadcast standards. This is as far as I understand, I'm not an expert in professional broadcasting, but as far as I understand, this is like the way video gets around professional broadcast studios. They use these coaxial cables with BNC connectors, which kind of twist and lock into place. Because it's a professional standard, it's designed to work over long distances with no problem, which is great. The coaxial cable is relatively simple. Obviously, there's only 2 conductors in a coaxial cable. So compared to other video cables, like a 100-foot SDI cable is probably going to be cheaper than like a 100-foot HDMI cable or something like that. Although they're not going to be as cheap as network cables. Unlike NDI, which is also, as I understand it, has some presence in the kind of professional broadcast space. Unlike NDI, you can't power the camera over the same cable, so you will have to run external power to to the camera. And obviously, professional grade and broadcast quality are great properties for something to have, but with that is also going to come a pretty high price tag. This is, I don't have any experience personally with SDI cameras, but just sort of looking around the web for models, they seem to start around $500, which is pretty expensive compared to most of the other camera options that we have looked at so far. And obviously, you need some way to get that SDI video into OBS if you're going to go that route. You have pretty much all the same options as with HDMI. You got external capture cards, internal capture cards. The Zowie box even comes in a version that has SDI inputs and outputs instead of HDMI. In general, I would expect to pay a little bit more than HDMI capture cards for any of those options. All right, so the TLDR of choosing cameras. I think given kind of all the factors we've talked about, NDI cameras are the best choice overall. They've got a really great balance of cost to performance to reliability. In particular, having one cable that can both power the camera and get high quality video out of it and be super reliable over long distances, that's a really killer feature for me. So if you can, if it's within your budget to have these NDI cameras, I think that's a really great choice. If you need to keep the cost down a little bit more, USB can also be a great option. If you can put the legwork in to find a reliable solution for running that USB cable over long distances, certainly that can be a great choice too. HDMI and SDI cameras, I think the primary situations where you're going to use those is if you already have some equipment available to you and you want to use that equipment. And if that's the case, certainly there's nothing wrong with using those cameras for this application. You can run a great live stream, but it's not where I would recommend you look if you are starting from scratch and looking to buy everything you need. I would go with NDI or USB. Okay, the next thing to talk about is where the cameras are going to go and how we're going to mount them. So obviously, pretty much every camera that you're going to buy for this application is going to have a tripod screw mount on it. Even most decent USB webcams at this point have those mounts. The problem is you probably need to go taller than a normal tripod can go. That depends to some extent on the program and the size of the field. If you're just running IQ events, you probably can get away with a normal tripod because that field is smaller. But for V5 and drones, you probably need to go up higher than a normal tripod can go. So the search term to start with on Amazon is light stand. Light stands basically are like tripods, but they get taller. I don't have a specific model recommendation, but there are lots of different models available on Amazon. I did find, pretty early in the search, this set that's in the top image there, which includes 2 light stands with cases and a couple of sandbags. I think having some sandbags to weigh down the base of the camera is a nice thing to do, particularly if you need to go super tall or you have a relatively heavy camera. You want to keep the thing stable. But I haven't used that specific model, so I don't have any concrete recommendations in this area. Another thing that we do use that have come in really handy for mounting cameras are these magic arms. This is again a standard name for this product. If you search magic arm on Amazon, you're going to get a bunch of these. And what they are is they have these flexible joints, so each end can rotate and pivot, and then this part in the middle can pivot here, and then this can rotate and pivot. And they've got a standard 1/4-20 tripod screw on each end. And you screw one end into this clamp, which they almost always come with these clamps. and the other end obviously goes on your camera. And you clamp this to whatever you want to mount the camera to, a pipe or a rail, or kind of wherever you want to mount the camera. And then you pose it, however you want, and then you tighten this knob in the middle. And when you tighten this knob in the middle, all the different joints become locked in place wherever you put them. So you can have kind of arbitrary posability to put the camera wherever it needs to go, and then you tighten the knob and it stays there. And it really is kind of like magic. I have seen, there are some teardown videos on YouTube that show how they work on the inside. It's really cool. And so these are relatively inexpensive, and a very handy thing to have around for mounting cameras to odd objects. All right, so we've got a thing to put the camera on. The next question is, where are we going to put the camera? I think it's best to put the camera on the audience side of the field, primarily because the audience side of the field is the only side of the field that doesn't normally have anyone standing right there. The other three sides are going to have the drive teams or volunteers, referees, other people. But generally, the audience side of the field is going to be open, and so that makes it kind of the prime candidate for where to put the camera. The other reason to put the camera on the audience side of the field is that's how the audience is used to seeing the field. So it kind of maintains some consistency for people in the venue versus watching the live stream. The downside is that probably putting the camera on the audience side probably means running the cables a long way, because your stream computer is probably going to be kind of behind the opposite side of the field. So if you really need to minimize the length of your cable runs, you could potentially put the cameras elsewhere. It's important to make sure the whole field is visible in the camera feed. Not just visible in the camera feed, but also not blocked by the graphics that TM is going to generate. So it's important to kind of make sure that the timer and other tournament manager graphics aren't going to block some important part of the field. I think having a straight on shot of the field is best. If you end up shooting it from an angle, it can look a bit weird. It also makes it, if you are looking at the field from an angle, then it's going to be more likely that people standing next to the field, such as the drive teams, are going to block some part of the field from the camera's view. So best to have it straight on. And I also like to put the camera a few feet back from the field so that there's room to walk around the whole field. That's going to vary from game to game. There are some games where people don't often want to walk around the audience side of the field. Other games they do a little bit more frequently, and in that case it's more important to have some space behind the camera. And I have some example images here. So here's an event we ran, a VRC event we ran last season. And I've circled the location of the camera in red in that image on the left. And you can see, I've got it a few feet up. This may be, 7 or 8 feet off the ground, and a few feet back from the field. Last year's VRC game, Over Under, was one of the games where I found it was important to put the camera a little bit far back, because 2 of the robots began the match on the audience side of the field, so there would be a lot of drive team members there pre-match, getting their robots ready to go. So it's nice to have the camera out of their way. And you can see, we got a nice clear view of the field on the right there. Here's another image. This one's from VRC Spin Up a couple of years ago, and at this event we put the cameras a little bit higher, which helped with visibility of the high goals there. And here I didn't give quite as much space between the field and the camera. I think we were just had a little bit less space to play with at this particular event. But again, we've got a nice clear view of the field there. And here we're zoomed out a little more so we can see the drive teams as well, which is kind of cool. Here's one on an elevated field. Not much of a difference here. Certainly you could put the camera up higher. If the field's 2 feet off the ground, you could put the camera 2 feet higher than you otherwise would, and that would be fine. But in this application, we gave a little bit more of a side-on view rather than a top-down view of the field, which I think ended up looking real nice. We got the sponsor banner in shot, and again, you can see most of the drive team during the match, which is cool as well. Here's an example from IQ. I think the only big difference here was we just zoomed in a little bit more on the cameras. Certainly you could get away with putting the cameras lower at an IQ event as well. And again, we've got a nice clear view of the whole field. And last photo, this is from one of our drone events. The drone field is, I would say, definitely the hardest to get the whole thing in shot because it's so big. We had to put the camera really high. You can just barely see it in this image. This image was taken from pretty far away, but we were just about maxing out the height of our stands here, but we were able to get the whole field in shot, except for some of the taller elements in the back. But that's the part of the field the pilots aren't supposed to see anyway, so it kind of worked out. All right, so that concludes our portion talking about video. Now we're going to talk about audio. And this is a little bit more of an area where I'm going to talk about running audio for an event in general, for reasons we'll come around to. So another block diagram. On the left, we've got our various audio sources. So we've got one or more microphones for our MCs to talk into. Tournament manager is going to generate sounds that we want the audience to hear at the start of the match and end of the match and so on. And then, it's nice to play some music as well. And those are all going into our audio mixer. And then the audio mixer is going to mix the, relative volumes of the audio so it all sounds good. And it's going to send that out to two places. One to the speakers that are in the venue so that the people there can hear it. And secondly, to our stream computer to go into OBS so that it gets added to the live stream. So general notes about audio, and this is why I'm going to kind of talk about running audio for an event more generally. If you're not worrying about live streaming, you can kind of get away with not thinking about audio too much. A lot of venues have PA systems already, and so if you don't need to worry about the live stream, you can get a microphone from the venue and talk into the PA, and then the field sounds can come from the computer at each field or whatever, and you kind of don't necessarily have to worry about mixing all the audio together in one place. However, for a live stream, you do have to worry about that because you want all the different audio sources to be mixed together and go out to the live stream. So whereas you kind of can rely on the PA in a gym or whatever for a non-live streamed event, if you're going to run a stream, you have to worry a little bit more about audio. So you can't just rely on the venue's PA. They might have components you can use. If they have a microphone, you may be able to use their wireless microphone. They may have a mixer that you can use. You may be able to plug into their speakers at the end to use in the venue. But what we need here is a little bit more complicated than just, I need a microphone, here's a microphone, we'll talk into it, right? And again, like everything, it's important to set up and test everything to make sure it all works together before the event. So we need an audio mixer. We don't need anything, super complicated or advanced in the world of audio mixers. I have some specific requirements here. We need inputs for our microphones, which are probably going to be XLR. We need, and those are going to be mono inputs, one channel of audio from a microphone. We're going to want some inputs that are going to come from computers for the tournament manager sounds and our music. Those are probably going to be stereo. We need some output to go to our speakers, which could be XLR or could be a 1/4 inch, depending on what speakers and cables you have. And then we need a second output to bring our audio out to OBS, which is probably going to be 1/4 inch, but there are some mixers that also have USB connections, so you can connect them to a computer over USB. That input could have a number of names. It could be that output could have a number of names. It could be the control room output. It could be monitor. It could be labeled aux. It could be a headphone output. There's lots of secondary outputs on a lot of these mixers. And it's nice to have, but not essential, separate volume control for that output so you can get the levels going into OBS just right. And again, none of these are particularly unusual or advanced features. Most audio mixers are going to meet that list of requirements. Microphones. I don't have any specific recommendations for microphones because I'm very far from an expert in that domain. I do have some general notes. You can have wired microphones or wireless microphones. I've found wired microphones to be cheap and very reliable. Obviously, the downside is you're hauling a long cable around with you, walking between fields or whatever. And a wireless mic solves that problem. I don't have any specific recommendations for wireless microphones, but I have had mixed to poor results with like cheap no-name wireless mics. So if you're looking to buy a wireless mic, I would recommend doing some research online and reading reviews and finding a good model. I do think it's really nice to have a wired mic available as a backup, even if you're using wireless mics, just in case something goes wrong. Speakers. In my experience, this is probably the area where you're going to be most likely to use things the venues already have. If you're in a school gym, a lot of school gyms already have speakers up in the ceiling, and very often there's an XLR jack in the wall somewhere that you can plug into, and then you're connected to their speakers. Obviously, you got to test everything before your event to make sure it works, but this is an area where you really need to test things because in my experience, sometimes they just don't work. So you gotta make sure that works before you commit to using those speakers. Another thing to watch for is there is often an amplifier between like the jack in the wall and the speakers, because you're meant to just plug a microphone in there rather than a whole mixed source. So if that's the case, you got to be a little careful about volume. Again, obviously test everything before your event, make sure it works. If you are looking to buy speakers, again, I don't have a specific model recommendation, but probably the search term you're looking for is PA speakers, and there's a wide variety of models at different sizes and levels of power and cost and all sorts of things. Another great option could be these like PA kits. So these often include a couple of speakers and a mixer that snap together into some sort of portable form factor. So like in this case, the two speakers are on the outside and they snap into the mixer in the middle. And some of these also come with microphones and stands and things, stands for the speakers, stands for the microphones. So these can be a great option too. They're often really cost effective compared to buying all these components separately. So if you're looking to buy an audio setup, this can be a really great choice. Obviously, just make sure that the mixer has all the features that we talked about. Right, music and TM sound. So these are both things that this is audio that's generated on a computer, and you connect that computer to the mixer. And then you get it into your audio mix. In the ideal case, these would come from two separate sources. And the reason for that is so that you can adjust their volumes independently on the mixer. You'll have one knob or slider on the mixer for the TM sounds and one knob or slider for the music. But they totally can come from the same computer. And in that case, you would just need to adjust their relative volumes in software on that computer. So if the music is too loud relative to TM sounds, you would need to turn down just the music in software. And that's pretty easy to do. If you're on Windows, there's a built-in volume mixer. The app that's playing music probably has its own volume control and so on. Another concern with playing music on a live stream is you need appropriately licensed music. There was a time on Twitch when you could kind of get away with playing whatever music you wanted in the live stream. That time has passed. Nowadays, if you're playing, just like music from your Spotify or whatever on a Twitch stream, they're going to notice and mute your audio or stop your stream. Obviously, YouTube is very good at recognizing music that's not licensed to be on YouTube and muting that audio or taking it down. And certainly, if you want your streams to be archived somewhere, then YouTube's Content ID is going to get you. So you need music that's appropriately licensed to play on a live stream. We use Pretzel Rocks for this service, for this purpose, and I'm really happy with it. They have a free tier, which is probably adequate for most applications. The paid tier just gets you like more playlists, and it works great. So I would recommend looking into Pretzel Rocks if you need appropriately licensed music for your live stream. One other thing to think about is how to get the audio into OBS. So your computer may already have the right input and output jacks for that. If you have a desktop, it probably does. You've probably got, if you've got like a big tower computer, it's probably got multiple audio ports on the motherboard, including at least one line in and at least one line out. Most modern laptops probably don't have separate input and output audio ports. So if you don't, then you can get one of these USB sound cards. They are super cheap. This one's under $10 on Amazon, and it works fine for this application. So you may need one of those depending on your computer. All right, we are done with slides. Now we're going to move into the setup demo. All right, here we are in the world of the demo, and I've got kind of all the equipment that we need here to set up a basic live stream. And I'm going to walk through kind of getting it all set up and plugging stuff in and configuring the software. So we're going to start with networking. And I've got just an old Wi-Fi router that I happen to have laying around here. And I've got some stuff plugged in here already. So this cable here into the internet port on the router, this is going off to my internet connection. The next cable I've already run to get my stream computer hooked up to the network, so that's hardwired. And then the blue cable here is going over to this switch. And I have this external switch because I'm going to use NDI cameras for this demo. And I'm going to power them over Ethernet. So I need a PoE switch to deliver that power. And that's what this is for. So all I've done here is I've run that cable to the port that's labeled as such on the switch. So now I've got my 2 field cameras mounted already on these magic arms. Obviously, at a real event setup, you wouldn't have all this equipment right up against a field. It'd be, back a ways and centered on the 2 fields. But this is just the space I had available. So this guy's going to represent the camera on field 1. And over here, this is going to be the camera on field 2. And let's plug them in. So I've just got some Ethernet cables here, and this is going to be slightly awkward to do one-handed, but I think we'll make it work. So I'll plug that in there, and then plug our camera in here. And you can see as soon as I did that, there's the activity light on the port is illuminated here, so our camera's getting power. And we'll just do that again with camera 2. Get that plugged in. All right, so now our cameras are plugged in and booting up. And while they're doing that, let's worry about audio. So here's our audio mixer. I've already got it plugged into power here. And I've got a microphone here. For the purpose of this demo, I'm just going to use one wired microphone. And we'll plug it in here. And now if I turn this microphone on, I've got a switch on the microphone here, and talk into it, you can see the bar graph illuminating there. So we've got audio in our microphone. Let's turn that off again. And now we've got a couple of cables here that we're going to use to get sound in and out from computers. So first thing, we need one cable that brings the output of the mixer into OBS, so it goes out to our stream. And we need another cable to get Tournament Manager sounds in. And we could also be playing music through this, but I'm not going to do that for this demo. So let's first get an input for TM sounds. So I'll just plug that into one of the stereo channels on the mixer here. I'll plug in both channels and then run this over to our computer. I've got two computers here. This one is going to be the stream PC, and this one is the TM server. And we're going to play the TM sounds from the TM server, so I'll just plug that into the headphone jack on the computer. And then in TM, I already got TM set up and launched here. If we want sounds to come out of this, then we need to make sure the play sounds checkbox is checked. So I've got that done already. And then cable number 2 here. This is going to take the audio mix that we produce with this mixer and bring it into OBS. So this is going to connect to one of the outputs. And on this mixer, on this particular mixer, I'm going to use the control room output, which is this one here, CR out. And the reason I'm going to use that one is this mixer has a separate knob to control the volume of that output. So we can fine-tune the volume that's going into OBS if it's too loud or too quiet. You could do the same thing with the headphone jack on this particular mixer. So this is a stereo headphone jack, and you could get the right adapter and plug that into an audio input on the computer as well. But I don't have that cable handy. So I'm going to use the control room out here, and we'll just plug that in. And we'll bring this end of the cable over to here. And I have one of these USB audio cards, so I'll just plug that in there. And that's as much audio as we're going to run for this demo. I don't have speakers here with me, but obviously I would just connect them to the main output ports here. This particular mixer has both XLR and 1/4 inch for speaker outputs. Okay, so that's all the plug-in stuff in that we're going to do. Now let's move over to our stream computer, and that's this laptop here. And I have an external monitor here on this laptop, which is going to represent the in-venue audience display. So this would be the television or projector that we would watch there. And I am just realizing that I forgot to set up the screen capture on this computer. So let's pause. I'll set that up, and then we'll look at configuring the software. All right, so here we are on our stream computer, and I'm going to go ahead and launch OBS here. And here's what we get, basically, with nothing configured. I have already launched the, kind of done all the initial configuration of, the very first time you launch OBS, there's a setup wizard that it walks you through. Again, there's lots of great resources on the internet about how to use OBS in general. For this video, we're just going to look at configuring things for our kind of sample stream setup for a VEX tournament. And I've also, just to go back a step, I've already installed all the software on this computer that we're going to need, which includes OBS. It includes Tournament Manager, the Tournament Manager plugin for OBS, which is a separate install. And I've also installed the NDI software utilities and the NDI plugin for OBS. And I'll have links to all of those downloads in the video description. It's all, I'm sure you've installed software before. You download the thing and run the program, and it installs the software. Okay, so in brief, the way OBS works is that we have a number of scenes here. So these are like different arrangements of things that we can show, different scenes. And then each scene has several sources, which are individual pieces of video, feeds from a camera, graphics that we can import that are going to be layered on top of each other to form the scene. So what we're going to set up is a scene for each field. So we'll have a scene for field 1 and a scene for field 2. So to start, by default, we have just one scene that's called scene. And I'm going to right-click that and rename it to Field 1. And then I'll also go ahead and add a new scene, which will be called Field 2. All right, let's go to our scene for Field 1. Now, each scene is going to have 3 sources. And the first source will be our camera feed for that field. So over here in the Sources window, I'm going to click Add Source, and we're going to add an NDI source because these are NDI cameras that we are using here. If we were using USB webcams, at this point we would want to choose Video Capture Device here. But I have NDI cameras for this demo, so I'm going to pick NDI source. And I'm going to name that source Field 1 Camera. And then click OK. And now we have this configuration window. There's a couple important options here. First thing, we want to pick the camera we want. So these are all the NDI sources that are currently available on my network. And I've already changed the name of my 2 field cameras because these are the field cameras we use all the time. So I'm going to choose Field Camera 1. And you can see the image from that camera pops up there. There are a couple of other settings that I want to adjust. I'm going to turn on hardware acceleration. I'm also going to go down here and change the latency mode to low. It does perhaps raise the nerves a bit that normal is labeled as safe, but we've never had any trouble with the low latency mode. And I'm also going to uncheck the audio box here because we don't want to use the audio from these cameras. We have our own audio mix that's going to come in separately. So I'll do all that and hit OK. And now we've got our camera visible in our window here. This area here is going to represent the video that we're outputting. So that's our camera. Now, on top of the camera is going to go the Tournament Manager graphics. So I'm going to add a second source to our scene here, and that's going to be a VEX TM display. And I'm going to call this one TM Audience Display and hit OK. Now we get another window here, so we're going to enter our TM server address and password. And I looked this up in TM before, so our TM server is 192.168. It'll let me type .168.100.212, and the password for this example tournament is test. We do want to enable overlay mode, and we want this to show all screens, so we can leave these all at the default for now. Now, as soon as I did that, we got this window which asks us which field set we want to connect to. We just have the one for matches here, so I'm going to hit continue. And now we've got those displays in our scene. So I can click OK, and now we can see Tournament Manager's graphics are overlaid over the video. So this is the real advantage of using OBS and the Tournament Manager plugin, in my view, is that we didn't have to worry about generating that display with some other computer and then capturing it over HDMI, or getting rid of all the green areas that are supposed to be transparent. That all just works, and it looks good with minimal configuration. All right, and then there's one more source that we need to add to our scene, and that's actually an audio source. So I'm going to add another source, and that's an audio input capture, and I'm going to call that in from board, and hit OK. And then the device we want is, in my case, the microphone USB audio device, and OK. And now in our audio, this is the audio mixer area, and we can see a little bar graph. And if I just pick up my microphone and turn it on and start talking into it, you can see now that as I'm speaking into the microphone, we're getting audio into OBS here, so that seems to be working. All right, now, just to demonstrate how the OBS plugin is going to behave, we're going to run some matches in Tournament Manager, and I'm going to do that from this computer too, just for simplicity, because I have a display capture set up on this computer for the video. So let's launch Tournament Manager and connect to this. And again, this isn't strictly necessary to run the stream. I believe you do need to have Tournament Manager installed on the computer, on the stream computer, but you don't have to be running it like this. This is just so that you can see what I'm doing in Tournament Manager and how the graphics will respond. So let me make OBS smaller here, and we'll put TM over here. Okay, so let me first queue a match on field 1. And now we've got this field set control window. And the first thing to notice is that whatever item we have selected here is going to be reflected in our live stream. So again, this works just like the normal audience display does. We can choose different options here, and our live stream will show that. And obviously, if we're about to start a match, we can choose up next. And we'll start the match, and it'll change to in-match, countdown 3, 2, 1, go, and we've got our timer running. Notice also that you could see on the graphics we had sounds there, and those were a little loud. So I'll just turn that slider down to reduce the volume. And we'll get another sound when autonomous ends here, so let's see how that looks. Yeah, that's better. So we want to try and keep the audio out of the red zone in our bar graph here. And of course, so we can keep going here. Now we're in driver control, and just so we don't have to sit around for 1 minute and 40 seconds, I'll go ahead and end that match. And now Tournament Manager will queue match 2, or I may need to do that automatically, or manually rather. So now we'll queue match 2, and match 2 is on field 2, so we need to change OBS to our field 2 scene, which means we need to configure our field 2 scene. So let's do that. We'll go back here. So to start with, let's add the camera for field 2, which is an NDI source. And we'll call that field 2 camera. And again, we're going to pick the right camera from our drop-down here. I'm going to request hardware acceleration, change the latency mode to low, and disable audio. And then we'll add another VEX TM display. Now this, because the audience display is the same, I don't need to create a new source here. I can just use the source that we already created for our field 1 scene. So I'll just change this to add existing, choose that, and hit OK, and we get that. And then we'll add our audio input, and same thing here. We can just add the existing source that we already have. All right, so now we've got our scene configured for field 2. And again, I can start a match on field 2, and we're off and running here. We can end autonomous. We can resume the match. So at this point, we have the basic configuration for our live stream done. Now, there's one kind of problem with this setup, where it's not a problem, but it's a thing we have to do. And that is, for every match, we have to manually select the appropriate scene in OBS based on which field that match is on. So right now we're running match 2, which is on field 2. When we finish this match and move on to field 3, someone will need to come over to the stream computer and click this button to move OBS back to field 1 so that we're looking at the appropriate camera feed. That's kind of a tedious job to sit behind a computer clicking that button all day. Kind of the way that the software is going, the Tournament Manager has gained a lot of additional functionality in the last couple of years. That means most of the time you don't need to have a dedicated volunteer sitting behind TM clicking buttons. You can start matches, submit scores, change the audience display. That can all be done from Tournament Manager Mobile now, which means that it can be done by the MC or a referee or someone else standing field side. So it's kind of a pain if you're doing all that from the field side, but you still have to have someone back here switching between field 1 and field 2 in OBS. So we can solve this problem with a piece of software called TM Switcher. And that's this here, TM Switcher by Brendan McGuire. and there will be a download link to this in the description as well. Now, a couple of things we need to do to run TM Switcher. The first thing is we need to have the Tournament Manager local API enabled. And you can do this during the wizard when you're setting up your tournament, but you can also do it at any time in options. You come down here to web publishing, and that's this box here. So the Tournament Manager local API is what enables third-party software such as TM Switcher here to connect to Tournament Manager and get information in real time about when matches are started and stopped and things like that. And we can enable that by clicking this checkbox here, and it generates a random API key. This is like the password that we have to give the software to allow it to connect. And it generates this random key, but we can actually change it. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to change it to test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Because that's a lot easier to type in. The API key has to be at least 12 characters long, so that's why I picked that. And I'll just hit Save Changes here.
Hey folks, post-production John here, and I'm sure some people are wondering why I changed the API key from the long, randomly generated string to something that I could type more easily instead of clicking the big button labeled Copy and copied the randomly generated string to my clipboard and then pasted it into TM Switcher later on when I needed to. And the reason I didn't do that is that the TM Switcher utility is running just in the Windows command prompt, and at the time I recorded this, I did not know how to paste text into the Windows command prompt application. You can't just hit Control-V. Control-V doesn't work by default. But I do know how to do that now. So here's how to do it. If you right-click the title bar of that window, you can open the Properties window. And in the Properties window, there's a checkbox that will make Control-Shift-V work as the keyboard shortcut for paste into that application. So at that point, you could hit Copy in the window in TM, where it generates the random key, and then paste the random key into TM Switcher with Control-Shift-V instead of Control-V. So that's probably what you should do instead of changing the API key like I did.
All right, now, the second thing we have to do is in OBS, and we have to enable the OBS WebSocket server. And this is kind of similar to the Tournament Manager local API. It's going to allow this software to connect to OBS and control OBS in various ways. So I got to that in OBS in Tools, WebSocket Server Settings, and I'm going to check Enable WebSocket Server, and likewise there's a password here, which I'm also going to set to test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Obviously, you should pick a more appropriate password when you're doing this for real. And we'll hit Apply here. And yes. Okay, now we're going to set up TM Switcher. So we launch the app, we get this. The first thing it wants is the VEX TM address. So we'll just type that in, 192.168.100.212. And then it wants the API key, which was test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, it asks us if we want to control OBS, and we're going to say yes. And the WebSocket address for controlling OBS, if you're running this software on the same computer as OBS, this will be correct by default. So I'll just hit enter to accept that default value. And now it wants the OBS WebSocket password, which I'm going to type in here. Would we like to control an ATEM device over the network? Our answer to that question is no. An ATEM is a model of hardware video switcher that this can also interface with. So now we're connected to Tournament Manager and OBS. It wants us to pick a field set to look at, and we can move up and down with the arrow keys, and we want to attach to match field set 1. So I'll just hit enter to accept that. Now it's found our list of fields here, and we're going to associate each field with an OBS scene. And that's going to be pretty obvious because of the way we named our scenes. So the scene we want to associate with field 1 is called field 1, and the scene we want to associate with field 2 is called field 2. associate display modes. So another piece of functionality that TM Switcher has is it can switch to a different scene based on which of these audience display screens we have selected. For the purposes of this demo, I don't want to do that. And then we have a couple of additional automations that we can select. Show intro upon field activation will change the audience display to this up next option as soon as we cue a match. I do want it to do that. We can optionally show the saved score after a match ends. I'm going to turn that on too. And we can optionally show the rankings audience display after every 6th match. And I'm going to leave that off for this demo. I'm hitting the space bar to select or deselect each of these options, moving up and down with the arrow keys. And then to accept my choices, I'm going to press Enter. We can also optionally start and stop a recording in OBS for each individual match. I'm not going to do that. And I believe that is all the configuration. So at this point, I can come over here. We're on the field 1 scene, so let's cue match 1. We're going to start match 1. And we'll end auto and start driver control. And then we'll end driver control. So now match 1 is ended. It's now going to show the saved match results display. Obviously, because we've just finished match 1, we don't have any saved match results yet. And then after a few seconds, it's queued match 2 and moved to the up next intro display for match 2. Now let's just, before we start match 2, we'll go ahead and save a score for match 1 so we can see what that looks like. So let's just say, yeah, sure, blue won this match 3-1. Obviously, this would normally be done by a tablet field side. And now notice that in addition to queuing match 2 and moving to the up next audience display in Tournament Manager, the switcher has also automatically selected the appropriate scene for that match in OBS. So now in OBS, we're looking at field 2. So I'll start the match, and we'll get through match 2 here. All right, match 2 is now over. It's going to show the saved score that we had recorded for match 1, and then a few seconds later, it's going to move us to match 3. So we've got match 3 queued. We've got the up next audience display selected, and we've got the field 1 scene, which is the appropriate field for match 3. So using this third-party software, TM Switcher, this has basically completely automated the task of operating the live stream. We don't have to do anything special or assign an additional volunteer to be back here clicking buttons. We can run the Tournament Manager software as we normally would, from a tablet field side, and the live stream will follow along with us. One last thing that I haven't shown yet is we want to show this stream on our audience display as well. So if I were to hit the Start Streaming button down here, during the initial configuration of OBS, I would have told it what platform I want to stream to and given it my credentials, so I might have logged into YouTube or Twitch, and that would mean that if I hit this Start Streaming button, then that starts our live stream. So we also want to show the stream the output of OBS on a local display in the venue, and to do that, I'm just going to right-click on this area, and I'm going to choose Full Screen Projector and pick the monitor I want. And if we go back to our camera here, you can see that now we've got that output of OBS on our audience display here. All right, that concludes our setup demo. I hope people find this useful. I'll have links to all the software and other information in the video description. If anyone has any questions or comments or suggestions, please feel free to share those in the comments.
Goodbye.